All right, welcome everyone. I'm kind of feel bummed because I can't see faces on Zoom. So I guess if you want to turn off your cameras this time, I'm not going to feel offended because I can't see anything. But welcome to our presentation today. This counts for the Be Well rewards. So if you're on Zoom, I think you're logged in through USU or registered, we probably have your A number. So just make sure that you select it on your Be Well rewards dashboard that you attended a lunch and learn and which one you attended. And hopefully that's all. And then we'll take care of the people in person here. I'll do a brief introduction to myself. I'm Stephen Clark. I enjoy learning and I enjoy sharing what I learn. So that's kind of, I volunteered to do this, which might seem weird to some people. This is actually I've done some presentations on HSAs in the past and financial stuff because that's one of my passions. This is actually one though and I don't actually have certifications or in that area, but it's just something I really enjoy. But this actually, I do have a Security Plus certification, which is interesting, especially because I feel like I know the ins and outs of the financial stuff better than even this topic. But I'm excited. I'm excited to present today. So just want to do a quick check on Zoom. Do you guys see the presentation? Should say cyber wellness and then cyber.
We can see it, Steve.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. So with the Be Well rewards, we often talk about health, our wellness, our physical wellness. We also have presentations that cover financial wellness. And I was asking Alyssa, who is in charge of the Be Well program, and I said, hey, what about digital wellness was the term I used at the time. I've learned since that digital wellness is actually a different topic than what I'm talking about today. So sorry, Alyssa, if I'm doing the wrong topic. But digital wellness is, I guess, it's your behaviors and usage of digital devices to be emotionally and mentally well. And that's not the topic. So I changed the title after initially presenting this to cyber wellness to kind of better present the idea that we're going to be focusing on cybersecurity and protecting our online accounts and that topic. So that's that. October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And so I did actually intentionally postpone this till October and made sure that we could fit it in October specifically so that we could help you guys, and then you can in turn turn around and help other people be aware of some of these cybersecurity things that we talk about today. In the bottom right corner of the presentation, for those that are online, you may have to pull out your phone, but you can scan that QR code to access the slides, and then in person, you're welcome to scan it as well. To access the slides, there's going to be some links in the slides that I won't discuss at length today, but for further information, if you're interested in learning more, the easiest way to access that will be to scan the QR code so that you can then click the links in the presentation. So here's our agenda today. We're going to talk a little bit about what do we need to protect with our digital lives and why. And then we'll go through various tips for cyber wellness, including phishing, password best practices, multi-factor authentication, and more. So I did want to mention, I enjoy answering questions pretty soon as they come, and rather than waiting till the very end, I will have a slide for questions at the end and happy to address additional questions there. But put in the chat if you have any questions, and Tony will ask those as we go throughout the presentation. So I always like when I can teach the individual, and so questions throughout kind of helps me tailor the presentation to you guys. All right, so I gave you the agenda, but here's the challenge. This is kind of my hope that we come away with today, is that you pick 1 to 3 things. I don't want you to pick too many because it can be overwhelming, but pick 1 to 3 things that you think you can start doing or that you can change this month. I'm hoping that some of you love cybersecurity as much as I do, and that you're already doing a lot of this. And in that case, and even if you aren't, you can still do this second challenge, and that is to teach someone you know, friends or family, about something that you learned today. I want to start with a story. So I'm going to share a story of why I wanted to do, one of the reasons that made me want to do this presentation. So I was on the phone with my mom one day, and she knows I like computers. So she told me a story of something that happened with some of her good friends. And so the story goes something like this. So her friends were on their computer, and they started to get these pop-ups that said you have a virus. And that's kind of a scary thing. When you start getting pop-ups that say you have a virus, you're pretty sure you have a virus. And these pop-ups, at some point, whether I don't know how far they clicked or if it was right there on the front because I wasn't there, but at some point the pop-ups were saying, to get rid of this, you need to call this phone number. So being scared and not knowing what to do, they pick up their phone and they call the phone number. And they talk to someone on the other end of the line. I don't know the whole conversation. I tried to get as much detail to help them out, but it's been a while, so I don't remember all the details. I'm guessing they asked for some sort of information to verify who you are. I don't know what that was, but you can imagine birth date, mother's maiden name, social security number, information like that may have been asked for. And then in addition to that, they said, okay, in order to help you get rid of this virus, we need to have you install this program so that we can then remote into your machine and get rid of the virus for you. So they went along. Again, they're nervous. It's in the heat of the moment. They're scared. The person helps them, and then afterwards, a couple days later, is when they start to think there may have been something wrong with this scenario that goes down, or that went down. And being this security-minded person that I am, I was pretty sure that something went wrong in that scenario. So that's the story. And it can happen to any of us. You start seeing pop-ups and you feel like there's a virus, you don't know what to do. And so it can be easy to fall into some of those traps, and in order to try and get things restored. So that's the story. And now we're going to jump into, I guess one thing I'll say, as far as that story goes, one thing that could have been prevented is, first of all, don't call the phone number that pops up on the thing that says you have a virus, that says call Microsoft. It's probably not Microsoft. It's probably some bad actor that's trying to install something on your computer, potentially get access to accounts that you have, and or something else. So just be really cautious. Don't call the number. Don't install the things they tell you to install. Instead, find someone you know who knows computers, and or take it to someone who does that as a profession to get rid of viruses. All right. So on that note, I want to just briefly talk about what are some things we need to safeguard to protect our digital lives. So accounts is probably the biggest one we'll talk about today, but also we need to safeguard our devices, our finances, access to bank accounts and things like that, as well as our privacy. So why would we want to protect our accounts? Well, here's some information that your accounts may have that would be beneficial to a bad actor. Personal information or identifying information. A lot of websites require you sign up and provide your birth date and your name, sometimes your address. And so if someone can hack into your social media account, for example, now they can get to your birth date and some of that information. One thing that I realized that I don't think I realized how many websites had banking information until I went through a recent scenario where I was resetting passwords. Anywhere you've ever shopped online probably has your credit card information stored, especially if you said save this. And so that information is on your accounts. Another thing that's important with your accounts is that having access to your account actually provides a level of authority or trust between that account and the institution that it's with or the organization that it's with. So if someone gets access to your bank account, for example, and you have a peer-to-peer way to send money, they can quickly drain the money out of your bank account because the bank, as far as they know, once you're signed in, it's you that, as far as they know. So that money gets transferred and it's gone, and the bank can't really remedy some of those things. Another thing that maybe isn't as important to bad actors, but can be, is your memories. Photos. Often photos that are uploaded have locations stored, so they can now build a profile of where you are and where you go. Things like that, or important documents. And then devices can have all that same information, as well as additional information you don't store online. Another thing that's useful with devices is, even if someone's not necessarily interested in getting access to your accounts, hackers can, if they can get on your device, they can then use that device to attack another organization, such as if they're mad at a company and want to take down their services, having multiple devices can do what's called a distributed denial of service, which is you use enough different computers to take down a company's website. So that scenario, they may not be interested in your data, but rather just want your machine or resources from your machine. Now I guess I want to address this myth that nobody would target me, right? I'm a nobody. Nobody who would be interested in getting my data. This assumption is wrong. I'm going to say it may be true, because who really is interested in attacking Stephen Clark? Probably very few people. So it's not necessarily that they're targeting me specifically, but often with hackers, they're doing mass attacks to find the easiest targets to exploit. And we've all been targets of this nature. And we all know about, or I'm guessing a lot of us know about phishing. It's something that's been talked about. The universities talk about it a lot. Phishing is a form of social engineering, and I first learned about social engineering when I went to a security conference hosted by USU several years ago. And it was a fascinating topic, because it's social engineering is it's getting people to either give you information or do things for you to get information, or to get them to do something for you. So phishing is a form of that. The purpose of social engineering or phishing, this is not a comprehensive list, but it gives you some ideas to get information or access, resources. There could be financial gain, or it could be simply they're just looking to have for some form of retaliation, or again, if they're angry with the company and you work for the company, they might be trying to get use some of that. So a lot of us know about phishing. There's a lot of other forms of social engineering or things similar to phishing that just to be aware of. So phishing is typically done by email. Vishing is just a fancy way of, it's the phone calls that you get that someone says, hey, I need you to give me this information, or or otherwise. Smishing is when you get a text message from someone, you don't know who it is, and they're asking for information, or I'm suspicious that smishing is one of those, when you get that text saying, hey, I'm interested in buying your home, I probably wouldn't respond to that or anything, because they could be just trying to get information from you. And then something that's to be aware of it's called spear phishing. And phishing, generally, they send a mass email out to as many emails as they have a list of, and they try and get whoever they can to click something. But spear phishing is more tailored to the individual that it's getting sent to. And while in the past that wouldn't be, it was less of a concern for most people, and it was more of a concern for higher ups in an organization. It's actually becoming more and more common to be able to do spear phishing. AI is part of that. Simply gathering data is part of that. But it can be really easy with AI now to craft an email that's, you say, hey, you go to Chat GPT and say, create a phishing email for, I mean, it's not supposed to do that, but for, you give them Stephen Clark, send an email to Stephen Clark that I need him to pay me money. And that doesn't, that could be legitimate. And you give a little bit of information about Stephen, and then now they can tailor an email that looks pretty convincing that, my my nephew that's been gone for a while, he needs some money. Um, and then just something else to be aware of, there's also social engineering isn't all done through electronic means or phone calls. It can also be done in person. An example of that might be if you have access to a secure location here on campus or elsewhere. They may be carrying a big box and say, oh, can you hold that door open for me? And you see it in some of the spy movies, where they use tactics like that. And that's all part of social engineering, where they're trying to get information or access to somewhere they shouldn't. And then briefly, this is not a comprehensive list, but some of the things that are warning signs that communication may be a phish is there's often a time limit, whether it's like a deal that's going on and you better click now before the deal expires, or some other sense of urgency. Sometimes there's threats or fear that's involved, that they'll say that you owe this money and the police are going to come for you, or there's a warrant. Anyways, things like that. And sometimes it's a simple threat, like your account's going to close. And that at Utah State University, we've seen some of that happen, where they craft an email that says you're going to lose access, kind of copying the legitimate ones that come from Utah State, but that add that sense of urgency or fear that, oh, I better do something quick, and so that you stop thinking about some of the safety things we're going to discuss in a little bit and just click the link to go take care of it. How are we doing on questions? No questions. Awesome. We'll keep going. And again, there's that QR code if you want to scan to get links. I'm not going to go through these 2 links here at the bottom, but that gives additional information of things you can look for or be aware of that are common in phishing emails. Tone or grammar was in that first link. That's different than usual. So you might get an email from your boss, but it just sounds a little bit different. It doesn't sound like his or her typical communication style. All right. So we've talked about kind of being aware that some of these things are out there. And now we want to discuss what are some things you can do to resist phishing. So if phishing is going to happen, you're going to see it. One of the simplest things you can do is, as you get emails and they are suspicious, in Outlook, especially with your USU account, you can click on report message and then phishing. USU's got it set up so that actually goes to the security team here at Utah State. They'll analyze it and be able to tell or be able to see, oh, this is a phishing, and we can now retract it, not just from your email, but we can take it out of the 500 other people that got the same email. We can take it out of their inboxes. And so I recommend you do that, mostly as a courtesy for your fellow coworkers who may have also gotten a similar message. So now let's talk about the ones that aren't as easy to identify. It looks like it may have been a legitimate email from your boss or a coworker that said, hey, here's an attachment I need you to open, or here's a presentation I need you to open, finish for me. If it seems a little weird or you're not expecting it, don't open anything and don't click any links. But first go and verify with the sender. So, and I wouldn't click reply to the email to verify, because through technology, bad actors can direct those replies to somewhere they control. And then they can say, of course it's me, or whatever. So you want to use another method, whether it's calling them on the phone, sending them a chat message, or maybe they're in the office and you can walk over to their desk. So that's something I would recommend. And then if you verified that, yeah, it's from them and it's legitimate, you're probably safe to open the attachment or click links. But before that, before you verify, be really cautious about that. And then a note on links. So if you don't have a way to easily contact the sender, say it's an email that looks like it came from your bank, and you actually bank at that bank, it's an easy, it's a fish when it's from a bank you've never banked with, and you can easily ignore that. But say it comes from your bank, you still want to be cautious. You can preview the links. On a computer, you would just hover your mouse. In fact, I put a link here just so I could show this. So you can see in the very bottom, of course, in person, this screen's kind of broken, but in the very bottom, it shows you the link. And so you can kind of look at that and see, is that the URL I'm looking for? One thing I'd be cautious is if you don't know a lot about URLs, or you can't tell if it's the right domain, you still want to be cautious, because there's ways that you can put usu.edu somewhere else. And so it kind of looks like it came from USU, but it's really badsite.com/usu.edu. And so you just be careful and watchful of that. On your phone, you can long press it sometimes, and it'll, instead of opening it, after you long press for about 3 seconds and then let go, it'll pop up the link that you're trying to open and ask if you're wanting to proceed. But even better, if you don't need to click a link to get somewhere, that's even better. You can go directly to your bank's website or the website that you're being told to go to, whether it's from a bookmark in your browser or some other place, and then navigate to that web page directly. I just want to make a few comments on resisting phone call phishing. So, and this happens a lot, where you'll get a phone call, and they may start asking for information. Maybe they claim they're from your bank or from the university or Microsoft or something like that, and then they start asking for information. I would say, if they're starting to ask for anything personal information, and probably early on, a rule that I've kind of set for myself, and I highly recommend this for you, is don't provide any information to people that's sensitive when they call you. One of the reasons why it's this third bullet point, that in parentheses, is that it's super easy for bad actors to make a phone call and say that it's coming from the phone number of your bank or the phone number of the university. In fact, sometimes you may have experienced this here on campus, where you see on your phone it says USU something or other, and it's got a 435-797 phone number, and you pick it up and it's some spam call. So it's super easy for caller ID to be spoofed and for it to look like it's coming from a legitimate source. So after you tell them, sorry, I don't give personal information or confirm personal information over the phone, or at least on incoming calls, then you can ask for another way to accomplish the task. I'm going to give a legitimate example that I went through and kind of walk you through what I did. So I applied for a credit card a year or so ago, and on my credit I had said, don't extend credit without calling my phone number first. And so it was a legitimate request to get a credit card, and they called me. But again, I felt uneasy knowing what I know to give out that information when someone called me. So I asked them, I said, hey, I don't feel comfortable giving my personal information over the phone. Can you provide me a phone number I can call, or another way to accomplish this? So they gave me a phone number. And so I hung up the call, and rather than just calling the number that they gave me, because they could have given me anything, I looked it up on the internet to make sure that phone number showed up on the actual credit card issuer's website. Had it not shown up on their website, then probably the best next step would have been to contact their customer support and say, hey, I got a call asking to verify information. And you go through those steps to verify the information that you're going to use before you give out personal information. However, you may have a call that they say, hey, we just want to verify that this is your email. And maybe you don't want to verify it's their email. It's if you have that rule in place, I don't give personal information, confirm or give personal information. It's an easy out. And if you don't feel that there's any need to act after that, you don't actually have to call them. So that second part, the last part on this slide is really only if there is a need. You know, for example, when I actually was trying to open an account with the bank, there was a need for me to act, or they would have just not opened the account.
There's a comment online.
Yeah.
Early comment is saying, I've seen a case where a bank number was dialed incorrectly by one number and the person on the other hand, and it was the bank representative instead of asking the credit card consultant. Be careful and double check to call the right number.
Awesome. Was that sent to everyone in chat? Awesome. So I'm not going to repeat that, but yeah, definitely be cautious and careful. And the same type of thing happens with websites too, that they may have a website where you type in bankoffamerica.com and you didn't realize you put 2 F's and it loads a page that looks like Bank of America. So whether it's phone numbers or addresses, web addresses, you want to be cautious and careful that you're putting in the right, that you're going to the right place.
And there was another question about credit card numbers. Someone from a different location, credit card. If you enter it online, then you can use it online regardless of whether you have it in your hand or not.
Yeah. So once you've entered your credit card information online, now most legitimate websites should try and they'll do what they can to protect that. For example, Amazon might have that information, but they may not present it to people to see later. But if someone gets to your account, they can potentially use that information. I think Amazon, last time I added a new address, it asked for the security code on the credit card again, so that they knew, like, oh, we want to make sure that this isn't somebody else adding an address and starting to make orders. So there are things that some websites do, but then there are also websites you might have shopped at where they store all that information in plain text somewhere that is easily stolen or hacked. There's other ways as well. If you go to a store and you swipe, or there's other ways, but you can swipe, and if someone had installed, a bad person had installed a skimmer, is what it's called, it can actually record the credit card information. So you do want to be careful, be watchful, watch your credit card statements. If there's anything that looks suspicious, then you call your credit card company, have them issue a new card, that type of information, that type of thing.
And then also, what are ways to check if attachments on emails are safe to open other than verifying sender?
That's a good question. I would be cautious. Probably don't open it unless you are expecting the attachment. Because even if it comes from a legitimate email, that email may have been hacked. If you can see the file extension, and even this you have to be careful because someone could name the file invoice.pdf or invoice.doc, but then after that is hidden the .exe, which means it's an executable. You just want to be careful. If you've got an antivirus, you could scan it for viruses, but that won't catch everything. So I don't know that I have a perfect answer or a surefire way, but yeah, just be watchful of that. Okay. All right, so we've talked about some of the ways people are trying to get information from us, phishing, all that, social engineering. But now I want to talk about some best practices for securing your accounts outside of being watchful and vigilant to not give away information that you have. And that's, we're going to start with passwords. So probably one of the most important things is you want to make each different account you create, you want to have a unique password. A lot of us still are reusing passwords. And the risk we run with that is when one website gets compromised or those credentials get compromised for one website, they can be then used to log into other accounts. I was watching a video in preparation for this of a hacker, and it's actually in a later slide, but the hacker talked about he would create an email that he would send. I'm guessing he was an ethical hacker, but still they do some of this stuff to kind of gauge how things are and how they work. But he'd get someone to click a link that's a deal that's going to expire, and even if it wasn't an account they already had, it was just create an account. And so they created an account on this site that was set up to get credentials. And as soon as they create that account, he would take the password and try it out on other websites with their username and password combination to see if he can get into their email or other things. So that's one of the risks you run if you're not doing a unique password for each account. Current recommendations typically are 12 or more characters, and you want it to be random. So don't use a single dictionary word or even a phrase that's common or related. Even some of us early on were like, oh, we can get around that. This won't be a dictionary word if I say password and put in some symbols, an @ symbol instead of an A or a 3 instead of an E. And so on this slide, I gave an example of replacement. Well, that's actually not any more secure than just typing in replacement, because hackers already know to try that. So when they're trying to get into your account and brute force their way in, that's something they already know to try. Another thing I want to mention is passwords are personal. So typically you don't want to be sharing your passwords with coworkers or friends. You want to be watchful of that. You don't know well, for one, it should be your account, and that's your authority and trust. And then for two, you don't know, once you've shared a password, you don't know where it's been or who it's been sent on to. Another tip for passwords, and this goes back to securing devices, is if there's a default password that comes with the device, such as a Wi-Fi router, or maybe you get an Internet of Things device, your smart fridge comes with a default password. You want to change those when possible, because it's super easy for a hacker to look up online what the default password is for that make and model, for example, of that router. And then another thing I want to introduce is the idea of passphrases. So typically, historically, passwords were 1 or 2 words, and maybe it was your grandma's name and your birth year or something like that. In last several years, passphrases have started to be kind of pushed as a little bit more secure. You can get the passwords longer while still remembering things. One of the keys, though, here that I'm going to say is that the passphrase should be random, because when I first thought of passphrases, I was like, oh, movie quotes or to be or not to be, things like that. And those aren't going to be secure because, again, hackers can create a database of quotes or things like that pretty easily and then try those. So you want it to be random, but passphrases are a good way to try and remember something. I don't think I put an example here. I think it's on the next slide. I put an example of a passphrase. We'll get at the very end that's random, but yet you can tell yourself a story to try and remember that passphrase a little bit better. So I wanted to share a little bit of my password journey. It's you will quickly see it wasn't perfect or ideal, but I don't know many of us who our passwords have always been perfectly secure or the way we use them ideal. So back in the 1990s, or early 2000s, this was my strategy. Is I had my one password and I used it everywhere, right? And that was pretty common. It's still, for some people, is very common. If that's you, this presentation is for you, and the message is stop it. Start using unique passwords. So the second step was you started to have websites that were like, you have to have a symbol or an uppercase letter or a digit in your password. And so, like probably most of you, I was like, well, the laziest thing I can do is add a 1 and a symbol. And I just did that on any of those web pages. But you can see it wouldn't be hard for a hacker to crack that password either. The next thing I did, and this was kind of clever, and maybe it's a good start if you don't want to go as far as I'm going to take you today, and that was I would add something unique to this website I was creating an account on. You can see here default password 1 at Apple. Maybe I use that to sign up at Apple, apple.com, but maybe I also use it to sign up at applesauce.com because, another account that I create. And so the risk is it may not actually be unique to each site. And the way I was doing it initially, it wasn't unique to each site. After you created enough accounts, it started to be used multiple places again. But that's an example of taking it a little bit further. But you can see if applesauce.com got hacked and the bad actor got my password at that site, they could pretty easily see, oh, I get what he's doing here. And then they go to banana.com and they put in the password, but it says @banana instead. So while it's a step in the right direction, you still want to be cautious about that. And then I started to use password managers. I started just using the built-in, what was in the browser, and then eventually switched to a dedicated password manager, which was separate from the browser. And what I typically recommend for people that even using the browser is a good first step if that's convenient for you. And then after a while of getting comfortable with using a password manager where it would fill in the passwords for me, I actually started to make random passwords. So here on the screen, I just used a password generator to create this. It's not one of my passwords, but that gives an example. I think it was 40 or 42 characters, random characters. And so if I use that on one website and I don't copy and paste it to others, that's going to be a unique password. And after a while, again, when I got comfortable with password managers, I got to the point where I actually don't know most of my passwords. And for a lot of security people, they'll say like the best password is the one you don't know, but because it's random and long and unique. There are a few, I create passphrases for a couple accounts that I don't want to potentially get locked out of, or that I need to use frequently. So for example, getting into my password manager, I use a passphrase that I can remember. It's random. You generated a random one, but remembered something in my head that'll help me to open it. And then to unlock my phone, for example, you're going to want to know that password because anything where you've got to get into a device where you don't have a password manager to get you there. But most online accounts, you can do random. I would recommend your email is something, again, you want it to be a random passphrase, but email might be a good one to remember so that you can get in case you get locked out of things. Any questions, Tony? Oh yeah, so you could use a passphrase anywhere, but with passphrases becoming more of a common thing, I'd say ideally you'll use a random password like this one on the screen here that's 40 something characters, and you can go as long as the website will allow you. But passphrases, again, you want them to be random, and if you can add some difference to it, such as a random uppercase somewhere in it, things like that complicate it a little bit. Because again, as hackers are getting more sophisticated, eventually they'll know like, oh, just try a bunch of words together and that. So, but yeah, passphrases would be really good for accounts where you need to remember the password, but you want it to be long and random. It'd be really hard to remember this 40 character password, which is really secure, but it'd be hard to remember that to get into your password manager or your computer or something like that.
And what password manager would you recommend?
So I won't give an official recommendation. There's lots of good ones, and my brother's, he's in security. He uses I think he uses either Dashlane or 1Password. Those are good, both good. Utah State University, the IT department for university credentials uses Bitwarden, so they have some licenses. So if you not that the university is gonna do everything for you, but if you call in with questions about using Bitwarden, they may know how to answer that, and that's what I use. I used to use LastPass, and they made some business changes that I just didn't like, and then they've had a lot of breaches. So I don't recommend that one at present, just because of the kind of the way things have gone with that. But still, yeah. So that kind of answers that a little bit. So getting into password managers, so I've kind of talked about it, but here are some of the benefits or some of the pros of having a password manager. I went and looked on my personal password. I have two accounts, one for the university and one for myself. Just on my personal accounts, I have over 500, oh, I think it was 586, but potentially more logins. And I'm just putting myself back in my shoes, back when I used 1Password for every site or had to start mixing it up because of site requirements. If you're trying to make each account unique, a unique password for each account, it's really hard to do when you get to 500 or several hundred or not thousands of passwords. And that's where a password manager is super helpful. But even if you only have 20 accounts, which I think very few people today have only 20 accounts, it's still difficult to make unique passwords without having a place to securely store them. One thing I like about password managers is the third bullet point is that often it will associate those credentials with a URL or a website. And so if you get a phish email that takes you to bankoffamerica.com and has an extra F there, when the page loads, your password manager won't show any associated logins with that URL because it's the wrong URL. And so while that won't prevent all phishing, you can still copy and paste or type in your password. It can kind of be a red flag of, wait a second, I have an account, but it's not populating or showing as available for this site. Password managers are great. Again, once you're comfortable with them, or if you want to just jump right in, you can make long random passwords with a generator. So it's easy to make passwords unique for each site. My recommendation when I talk to people who aren't using a password manager is start where you can. But I would highly recommend creating a strong master password and or passphrase. And there's an example here at the bottom, passphrase example. Don't use this because now it's out in the wild, but it's random words that you can create some story in your head. Riveter, -upgrade, Hardy, 0, aerosol. And you create some kind of a story that helps tie the words together in the right order. You can throw in a capital letter somewhere just to add a little bit of variety with it, or a number. And you've got the dashes, which help with the symbols. So it adds more characters and to that. So I'm not going to show this link, but again, if you've got the QR code, you can scan it. This is that one where a hacker talked about how to do to get access to people's accounts, and his recommendation, he actually mentioned LastPass, and this was before several of the recent breaches, but any password manager really, where it allows you to create unique passwords without having to try and remember 586 unique passwords that have to be changed on some sites occasionally too, so that adds to it. These three links, the first two, again, I use Bitwarden, so I tried to find some that kind of showed Bitwarden, but a lot of it's the same for different password managers as far as creating a storing a login in the password manager or using a login to log into an account. And the third video, I thought this one was interesting. He showed 3 ways to manage passwords. One is having a physical notebook that you can safeguard, you can put it in a safe. And that's kind of the easy way. And maybe if you can't convince your parents to learn to use a password manager, that might be something you consider. But if you do that, you want them to have it somewhere secure. You put it in a safe, somewhere behind lock and key. One benefit of that is that it's not on the internet, so they can't grab that data. They'd have to physically be there. But you also want to have some security and backup in case the house burns down. You don't want to lose all your passwords and things like that. But then he goes all the way to another extreme, which I'm not going to say that we necessarily have to do, but password managers was kind of the middle ground that he recommended for most people. These are some examples of what password management isn't, or bad password management. If you write your password on a sticky note and that goes on your monitor, under your keyboard, or in your top drawer, as soon as someone gets physically close to your computer, those are going to be some of the first places they look for sticky notes with things that look like passwords. If you're reusing passwords, or like I showed you, my unique password, that if you found it, you could easily figure out the pattern, and it's not really unique. Something that's kind of cool and exciting, actually, is up and coming is passkeys. So before I go on to passkeys, any other questions online? Tony, are we good?
Passphrase used instead of a password.
Yes. So passphrase is just another way to do password. Yeah. So you can, anywhere that they ask for a password, you could use a passphrase. So it's just longer, unless they have character limits and you can't do more than 16 characters. It's kind of hard to do a passphrase. So I'm not going to talk too much about passkeys, but you may notice as you start signing into websites on your computer or even on your phone, Google or Apple or Windows might ask if you want to create a passkey. And it may be instead of, or it may be in addition to a password. The nice thing about passkeys is that the website that you're signing up for never actually gets the private portion of your key, so it stays on your device. And so I think it's kind of cool. It's essentially a password manager built into your devices. So kind of cool. And a lot of password managers are building support so that you can store passkeys in your password manager as well. If you want to learn more about passkeys, again, scan the QR code and look at the links. I want to address multi-factor authentication. So a lot of us at Utah State University are familiar with this because we're switching from Duo to now Microsoft multi-factor authentication. What does multi-factor authentication mean? It means you've got 2 or more of the following: something you know, which is often a password or a PIN, something you have, and something you are. So if you're using 2 or more of those, that's what multi-factor authentication is. Sometimes it's called 2-factor authentication, but that's what it is. Why do you want multi-factor authentication? It's a little bit less convenient because now you've got a second step to get in. But why you want it is because phishing works, even for the best of us. You think you're clicking on a legitimate link, it looks like the legitimate website, you put in your password, and now someone's got your credentials. Even if it's not something you did, businesses get hacked and credentials get stolen that way. And multi-factor authentication can help against some of those scenarios. Password cracking works. So if you've got a password that's either been used before or exposed or is simple enough, people can get into your account, and multi-factor authentication essentially blocks logging into an account if you don't have that second factor, the something you have or are. I'm not going to go over this too much, but not all multi-factor is equal. But if you want to sign up for it wherever you can, because it creates a little bit more inconvenience. One thing I will say on this though is about them not all forms of multi-factor being equal. This first point, MFA fatigue, shortly before or as we were switching over to Microsoft Authenticator, we did start to notice more at Utah State, more and more MFA fatigue, which is someone gets your username and password to your Utah State account, and they would keep trying to log in, which would push a Duo notification to your phone, and you'd try and click deny every time, but they would keep doing that in case you accidentally hit approve. And then once you hit approve, then they got past your second factor. And so even though it's less convenient, one thing I've actually, from a security standpoint, that I like about Microsoft is it'll send you 2 numbers, and you've got to know what those 2 numbers are to type in. And again, it's a few more steps, but it's that much more secure because you're going to have a harder time typing in just the right 2 numbers out of 100 potential combinations and letting someone in your account accidentally. I'm going to skip over a lot of this stuff just for the sake of time, but these are some tips for protecting devices. So we've talked a lot about accounts. These are some things you can do to protect your devices. The one that I've started to do, again, with your phones, you want to set up a lock screen. And then with my computers, I try to create a separate admin account. And what that protects you from is when you get a download and you think it's something, and anyway, or someone somehow gets access to your computer and they try to automatically install something, that can kind of protect you because it'll pop up saying, are you sure you want to install this? And you have to type in a password. So that can be helpful. And then so I'm going to talk about this one just a little bit because I feel like there's content blockers. Often they're ad blockers, but I like uBlock Origin because while it does block a lot of ads, it also blocks those malicious ads or those things that I think it protects you from a lot of those ones where you click on something and now in your browser it says you've got a virus. A lot of that is kind of thwarted by blocking some of that malicious content. And then the Brave browser is something I've started to use. It's privacy focused, but it has a lot of that stuff built in to kind of protect you from whether it's tracking or some of those bad malicious ads. It has some of that. So just going to briefly mention that. I'm going to skip over social media, but there are some tips there, mostly regarding, don't post that you're going to be out on vacation, especially if that post is going to go out to the world, just to protect your home and your family. Something for public Wi-Fi, just be aware of when you go out to a bar or to a restaurant and they've got public Wi-Fi. If you connect to that public Wi-Fi because you're low on data or whatever, just know that information could potentially be pulled by a bad actor that's there or tapped into that Wi-Fi. So if you must use Wi-Fi, if you have access to a trusted VPN, Utah State has a VPN, and some of us are familiar with that. But if you have a trusted VPN, you might want to connect to that so that it encrypts and hides that traffic so that you don't have the bad actor seeing that you went to your bank and where you're banking and potentially getting some of that information. For your devices, enable automatic updates when possible. And if you're doing it manually, go check occasionally, make sure your things are up to date. A lot of software now comes with that automatically enabled, but just you want to keep software up to date to protect against security vulnerabilities. And then I did want to briefly touch on when your data is exposed, because the truth of the matter is a lot of our data already is exposed. Several of us may have received communication about some of our data being exposed through a software vulnerability with one of the benefits vendors. It happens. Most Americans probably have their social and their name floating out in the wild from a few years ago, the Equifax breach, where socials, birth dates, and personal information was exposed. So depending on what was exposed, there's going to be different things. But here's what I would recommend if you think your passwords are potentially compromised. This is the order I would go in to reset account passwords. I would do the email account that you use to sign up for stuff first, and the financial account second. The reason email is first is that most websites allow you to click forgot password and reset your password via email. So if someone's got access to your email account and they can go to a website, say forgot password, and reset your bank account password. So that's where I would go first, is the email you use to set up accounts. If you use different email for your banking and your other accounts, then prioritize the banking for sure. And then go to your financial accounts and then additional accounts. Now, what about the fact that your social's out there because of Equifax or other breaches? The other recommendation I would do, and this is less cybersecurity, but still it's related, it's protecting your finances, is do a credit freeze. And again, if you scan the code, here's some links. The first one's just showing you, it walks you through how to, and then the other ones are direct links to go to the specific credit bureaus and do a credit freeze. And that, what a credit freeze does is it prevents someone, well, I don't know if I can say 100% prevents, but it helps prevent someone from going and applying for a credit card in your name, or opening a line of credit with a bank, or taking, doing some of those things. It prevents some of that because the bank can't extend you credit, or shouldn't extend you credit if they can't review that credit report. So, and here's additional resources, but any questions